Last week, the media was consumed with stories of plus-size film director Kevin Smith being taken off a flight due to comfort and safety concerns. This week, Toyota is in the hot seat, answering questions before Congress regarding safety, sharing of information, and recalls. Big business intersects our lives at every turn, but are they really watching out for the consumer? To what lengths can companies go to protect some customers while still trying to respect the rights and freedoms of others? Tonight, how much are we protected when big business is focused on the bottom line? I'm Ernie Manous, and this is Houston 8. Kevin Smith is not the first oversized person to be discharged from a plane, and chances are he won't be the last. Airlines have struggled with obese passengers since the 1980s, when the so-called Fat Man fare was first introduced, charging overweight passengers for a second seat. In 1984, when buying a ticket, a 500-pound woman was told she would have to pay extra to fly, a policy upheld by the next two airlines she tried. The incident garnered huge media attention, and the Fat Man fare has plagued airlines ever since. For safety reasons, the airlines have assigned a maximum weight per seat. Allowing a person who exceeds that weight to occupy a single seat puts multiple people at risk. In 2004, a study reported in the American Journal of Preventive Medicine argued that larger passengers were not just a concern when dealing with comfort or safety. They were costing airlines hundreds of millions of dollars more in fuel. The report went on to suggest that burning this extra fuel had an environmental impact as well, by increasing airline CO2 emissions. Last year, in an attempt to accommodate the larger size of Americans, the FAA directed airlines to increase the maximum weight per seat from 180 pounds to 190. But the concern continues. How do we transport all who wish to fly while taking into consideration comfort, safety, and cost? Joining us tonight to discuss this topic and others is John Beddow, Houston Business Journal publisher, and the People's Lawyer Richard Alderman, Director, Center for Consumer Law, University of Houston. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank
you.
To
start off with, the first question that comes to mind when talking about all this and with the airlines is, if you are giving the same service to a passenger, to a customer, can you charge some people more than other people?
From a legal standpoint, you can charge anything you want to anybody, and you don't have to do business with anybody unless you're discriminating on some basis that's protected by law, so that certain categories are protected: race, sex, age. You can't discriminate. You couldn't start charging men more than women. If you wanted to, for example, whatever your business is, if I decided I didn't want to serve redheads, I could just say, you can't come into my place of business. It's usually the marketplace that mandates the business doesn't discriminate. Sure, discrimination in and of itself is not illegal. It's only when you discriminate on one of the protected classes. And if an airline wants to treat somebody that is obese differently, that's not a category that's protected. They don't have to make any reasonable accommodations. They can do that. Obviously, every business is concerned, though, with the bottom line. They don't want to lose business. They don't want to offend existing customers. They don't want to lose new customers. So they have to balance that. But the law doesn't really force them into a decision.
Yeah. Now, John, this keeps coming back into the media, this Fat Man fare.
Sure.
So it's there, it kind of dies out again, it comes back. From a business point of view, this must be a nightmare to them.
To some extent it is. As long as you announce it up front, which Southwest Airlines does. And by the way, the person in question had bought 2 seats on a flight. He had them reserved, but he had an opportunity to catch an earlier flight, gone on standby, and then that's when all the problems arose, which Southwest probably did not handle very well. And it's ironic that it's Southwest Airlines, because they have one of the best customer service ratings of not just the airline industry, but just about any company you can think of. So, and it's the bottom line, of course, is important, but you don't get a great bottom line unless you treat your customers right. I mean, that's how if you have a product or service that your customers like and enjoy buying from you, that's kind of a nirvanic state. And
when we talk about Kevin Smith,
they're in that right now.
Right. When we talk about Kevin Smith, okay, he's got money, he can do that. But for the plus-size person who's watching right now, and if you follow the piece too, it says 190 pounds is what they consider the maximum weight for a seat. At that point, anything over 190, couldn't they suggest?
You average that out because you have infants and toddlers and kids and all that. I would say that if it's like any other business, there's certain types of customers that are optimal for a business, and some aren't, and that's based on. You go to an amusement park, and if your kid's not higher than that line, he can't go on the roller coaster. If you want to go to the Naval Academy and U.S. Naval Academy, and you're too tall, chances are they're not going to take you, because I don't know whether you've ever been on a ship or a submarine, but 6'8", of course David Robbins hasn't been the problem. So
or mine.
So the whole world is full of things and opportunities that not everybody can enjoy because of whatever circumstance you might want to think of.
And almost every airline has a similar policy. Almost every airline has some point at which they will require that you pay extra or buy another seat. And I think that what they're doing is just, they're balancing. We want as many customers as we can have, but there are some safety concerns. And there's concerns for other passengers. If you are in between two oversized people, it's not a comfortable flight. You have safety concerns. Everybody says with a long flight you should be moving, you should be up and about and do things. You may not be able to do that. So I think it is a hard issue for the business.
Here's what's going to happen. You can mark my words on this. You mentioned that there was an official association of obese people.
There are a few of them.
There are a few of them up there. And you mark my words. They are at some point in time they're going to go to Congress, and they're going to file or move for them to be a protected class. And when that happens,
they have. Actually, it's been litigated.
Okay.
The issue we have the Americans with Disabilities Act is the law that protects people that are disabled.
Right.
And the question is whether obesity fits that. And so far, the answer has been no. Right. And either the courts or the legislature can change that. And there have been movements to include obesity, which I think part of the problem is defining that. I mean, where do you reach that category to be something that's protected? And then, the airlines they will not have to treat you the same, but they have to make reasonable accommodations.
That's the rub, because that term, reasonable accommodation, is so amorphous.
Yes.
And there's no detail. And it's going to be a boon for trial lawyers. Right. And then I can see airplanes will have to have certain sections in the plane set aside for obese people. They have to make a reasonable accommodation. So if you're a normal person that can sit in an airline seat and those seats are full and there's empty seats there for the obese people, chances are you're not going to get on the flight because they have to set those aside. Just like the restrooms in office buildings.
Talk to me a little bit about the Passengers Bill of Rights. We heard a whole lot about that a couple of years back, but I haven't heard anything on that recently.
There isn't anything in it that applies to what we're talking about. The Passengers Bill of Rights deals with a lot of issues and what notice you have to give and what accommodations have to be made and what rights you have, but it also doesn't include obesity. It includes disabilities. It includes how you treat people when the airline is delaying the flight, making sure people know what their rights are. But it doesn't say anything about accommodating someone who is obese.
Now, I would suggest that if someone has a problem with getting on an airline, getting a seat, I suggest they run for Congress and get elected. If you remember, Sheila Jackson Lee had a whole row reserved for her when she took a flight back from Washington to come back to her district. Sometimes she gets free upgrades to first class. Now, the first class seats, I think, could probably accommodate most of these people.
And we have heard from folks in the airlines who have said...
So what I'm saying, if it's good enough for congressmen, maybe,
But we have heard that they will oftentimes, if you arrive at the gate and are a plus-size person and there is room in first class, that they will move somebody up if they can accommodate that to make it more comfortable for all passengers. So there is that. that movement out there at times.
So overall, I think the airlines are doing a good job on this. It was kind of ham-handed the way Southwest handled it,
and from a rights point of view, I'm sitting at home, I call up, I order my airline ticket, and I show up at the gate. I have bought my ticket. Once I have paid for this ticket, do I have a certain right to demand that I get the service I paid for?
No, I don't think that's ever the case. You call up and buy a ticket to go see a concert somewhere, and you show up wearing underwear. They're not going to let you in. They have rules, and you have to follow those rules.
You mean underwear only?
Underwear only. Underwear only. Or you're drunk and abusive. It's the same thing with the airlines. If you show up for the plane and you're drunk and being abusive, they're not going to let you on. They should publish their rules. I think some of them are better. I went, because I knew we'd be talking about this, to see how hard it was on the website to find things. You can find these questions. I think most people who know they might encounter this problem, at least today, know this is something you should be concerned about, and you should look after you buy the ticket. Maybe a few years ago, when airlines had the policies but they weren't getting a lot of publicity, people could say, I didn't know, this is a new rule, how can you expect me to pay the money? But I think today customers know what the rules are going to be, and businesses all have the right to establish the rules that they think are reasonable, that they think are necessary for the comfort of other passengers and for safety.
And for a customer relations standpoint, I think it'd be wise for some of the any of the airlines on their website, when you're in the process of buying your ticket, just kind of have some caveats up there, so there's no unpleasant surprises when you show up at the gate.
That was a question. It's and I know neither of you represent airline industries or have this as your area particularly of expertise.
And none of my relatives work for the airlines.
Okay,
either.
Good. We've clarified that.
We do fly.
Yes.
We do fly.
But at what point do you disclose your size I mean, I'm going to buy a ticket and I weigh 400 pounds. Do I tell them that? Don't I?
That's the everything's got a payback or a payoff, and if the obese lobby, for lack of a better word, really presses for this, then that's going to have to happen. They're going to have to declare how much they weigh or something, and nobody wants to do that. So there's always there's a plus and a negative for just about anything that happens when you're dealing with laws and the ADA as he described, and that's going to be one of the things, I can guarantee you that.
One issue that kind of comes out of all of this is talking about the service that you get and the way you are treated and the way an industry takes care of one customer, and I don't want to say at the expense of another customer, but how is that balance brought in? One of the big parts of this whole argument is comfort for your other passengers, but what about comfort for the plus-size passenger? How do they balance that so that they don't end up on the news like this has happened and they give the same service?
Well, what's it, caveat emptor, buyer beware? I mean, that's been around since the Roman Empire. And I guess there are some things that when you buy a product or a service from people, there are some things that you need to kind of investigate, I guess, on your own to find out how that's going to work. And when I get on an airplane, and I always fly coach, I kind of say a secret little hope and wish that whoever's sitting next to me...
There's people coming down the aisle that you think,
don't sit here. Does not take up, or I hope it's I mean, it's great that, people fly with their infants, but I kind of hope that they don't sit next to me, and I go to a movie theater. Of course, the movie theaters let the infants in and ruin it for everybody. So it's you have a very amorphous situation when you're dealing with such a broad base of customers.
Yeah, I think that's what Southwest would probably like to have a do-over for. That's the hard part of doing business is you are always balancing one customer against another customer, always against the bottom line. And you want to make sure that everybody's happy. If you can't make everybody happy, you want to make as few people as possible unhappy without the publicity that might come from doing it. And my guess is if they had this to do over again, they would have found another way to do it, and maybe they would have said, if we can put you on this later flight, we actually have an entire row and there'll be no problem. And we'll buy you dinner if you'll just wait the extra hour or something. So it's always good to look back. It's always easy to look back and say, oh, you handled this wrong. The hard thing is how do you want to handle it? And I think from what I've seen, almost every airline has policies. But the policies apply till somebody starts yelling, or somebody goes on television, or somebody happens to be more famous than somebody else.
Right. If it had been just like Bill or Joe who was overweight and got taken off.
Like a certain congresswoman we discussed earlier. You know.
Right. I think once you're in the public eye, you're going to get this attention. Bad move to do it to a famous person.
See, the big thing, it's easy for us to, I mean, this woman, the flight attendant, I mean, you've got the fog of war going on there because the flight needs to take off and this person's coming in at the last minute. But, you know, I see airlines bribing people all the time, and maybe they should have announced, hey, we'll give you a free round trip anywhere in the U.S. if you give up your seat or something like that, and that way the guy could have been accommodated as best as possible. But,
turning topics a little bit so we don't kill this one too much, I want to go on to what's going on with Toyota. And the reason I ask that is I think from a consumer point of view, what should we be aware of at this point?
You should be aware that
if you have
Toyota
a Toyota
has problems, and they're trying to figure out exactly what it is. And I believe they are in good faith doing everything they can to get it repaired. And they have a fix for some of the problems. Watching some of the hearings, they seem to be admitting that there may actually be some electronic glitch that they're not aware of. But, you know, for the consumer, I hate to say this because, you know, 1 out of a million is great odds or horrible odds, depending on whether you're that one. The vast majority of the cars are fine, and there haven't been that many problems. And I think when people are saying you should continue to drive the car, that's probably the best advice. There are very few products that we are ever involved in that are as complicated as a car that don't have problems. And that's something that, you know, we accept, and we know in most cases the problem won't be that serious.
Bigger than just the Toyota issue, looking at the recall issue, when you hear that there is a major recall going on and you bring in your product and it is repaired, replaced, is that the end of your legal action you can take?
If all that's happened is you had something with a defect and they're going to fix it, that's the end. As far as the law is concerned, you're not really entitled to anything else. What you have is called a breach of warranty, and the contract gives you that warranty rights, and the contract actually limits your remedy. Every car manufacturer has the same contract. It says you are limited to repair or replacement, and you don't get anything else. On the other hand, if you've had an accident, that's a very different story. And there have been a lot of lawsuits filed on behalf of the people that have had accidents. Those people can recover medical expenses. Those people can recover whatever other economic loss they've had. But for the people who just have a car, and I get a lot of emails from, you know, I think my car is worth less, or I have been upset because I've had to drive it. The law doesn't really give you any compensation for that.
Now, one of the big things that they're doing in the hearings is trying to find out when people knew what. As they find out things, and if they were to find out that actually some company X knew beforehand that what they were making was a faulty product, does that change it then?
It will change the lawsuits. I mean, in this country, we regulate the marketplace primarily by private lawsuits. We have much less governmental regulation than almost anywhere. We rely on a lawyer filing a lawsuit, and unlike the rest of the world, juries. We let juries decide what will the punishment be, how can we deter wrongful conduct, how can we punish companies that act in a bad way, and that's where it will matter. If a lawsuit comes up and somebody has been injured or killed because of this brake problem, and the jury hears that they knew about it and they didn't take steps to fix it, that jury will impose punitive damages, which are also very unique to the United States. In many countries, you'll be fined by the government. You may be thrown in jail. Many countries will throw the officers of the company in jail. Japan's one of them. But here, we impose punitive damages, and that's what will change. That aspect of a trial, you've seen it in the Vioxx trials. The big issue in the Vioxx trials was, when did they know that the drug was dangerous? When did they tell people? And the punitive damages are, in some of the cases, were the profit they made during that time. You know, we're not going to let you make a profit. So that's going to change. The extent of a judgment in these cases will depend on what information comes out now.
again, there's irony here, but just like the Southwest Airlines, because Toyota has been known for years of making a very good car. Quality has always been at the paramount of everything they did. As a matter of fact, Edwards Deming, the father of quality control, was the one who taught the Japanese the right way of handling quality control, which is at the front end of the manufacturing process as opposed to the end of the manufacturing process. Now, the problem, and not just Toyota, I see this with other cars too. Automobiles are now computers on wheels. Mm-hmm. So when you're at your desktop and your computer crashes, you reboot. Nothing's ever said. But if your car needs a reboot when you're going 70 miles an hour, which is kind of what this is very similar to, then you've got a more of a computer problem than a mechanical failure, and that's going to last as long as computers are in cars. And I'm kind of holding judgment on a lot of this. I got to tell you, I'm not going with the conventional wisdom, because there's a huge conflict of interest going on here. You take the Secretary of Transportation, Ray LaHood. He came out very early on this and told everyone not to drive a Toyota. No one should be driving a Toyota. Now,
that wasn't what he meant.
Well,
then he went back and changed the statement.
Yeah, right. Well, it's too bad. Once you say it out first, the correction doesn't usually make the news cycle till later. But the problem I have with this is not only is Ray LaHood the Secretary of Transportation, he is also a de facto owner of two automobile companies that are bitter rivals of Toyota. Yeah. And this show trial, I'm not saying these people shouldn't be brought before Congress, but I think there was a special intensity on some of the questioning that it probably wouldn't have happened had this been another car company or another product failure.
Yeah. And I don't recall, maybe you do. I don't recall there being anything similar with the Firestone Tire Ford problem, which was almost to the same extent, and in fact,
which surprises me why even Mr. Toyota is here talking to Congress.
Well, I think there's a certain honor that he has to defend. I mean, his I think it was either his father or grandfather started the company,
right?
And his name is on that car.
So legally, though, what is happening with these trials? Why? What is accomplished by him going before Congress?
Well, one thing has nothing to do with the other. Yeah. As far as the law is concerned, I mean, what's going on is, Congress is doing an investigation. I'm not sure what Congress will do if they get the information that they want. I'm not sure that they have the right to do very much. I mean, they're not going to say you can't sell Toyotas in this country. They may order a government recall. So far, the recalls have been they've decided what they want to do. They may order that Toyota do something. What's going on separately are the lawsuits, and there have been many of them filed. And right now, they're probably waiting to see what information is disclosed. I don't know a lot about how Toyota will react. If I were Toyota's lawyers, I'd suggest these lawsuits get settled. This is not something you want to be in front of a jury with. And right now there's been so much publicity. And if you go before the jury, I think there's a good chance you'll end up paying a lot of money.
Information that comes out in the hearings can be used in court?
Sure, right. Now the other thing is the company that makes this brake assembly is an American company.
And from the most recent news we have heard at this point, we're not sure if it is the brake assembly, if it is the computer. Early on, they said it was the floor mats were causing it, so we don't want to say anything.
Could have been a little bit of everything. So, Toyota, when they first started selling cars over here, the hue and cry was, well, why don't you come make your cars over here? So they did. They employed, hundreds of thousands of people when you count the dealerships and the plants and everything. And then there was a big Buy American hue and cry, so they started dealing with suppliers, American suppliers. So it'd be interesting to see if what culpability the manufacturer of the
and
assembly
the lawsuits
has
that
on
are being
this.
filed are being filed against both of them
Right,
for just that reason.
Right.
When we talk a little bit about consumer advocacy, consumer care, who's taking care of the consumer, and you say, it's pretty much buyer beware out there, drugs have an agency that checks them.
I don't know if I accept it's buyer beware.
Not on this particular
I
thing.
mean, it's, there are
yeah.
the laws, but who's taking? Nobody likes to hear this. The person taking care of you is your lawyer, and for a long time now, we've been trying to say, we don't need lawsuits, we don't need lawyers, all this stuff is bad. That's not our system. I mean, we have laws that give you warranty rights. We have laws that protect you when you've been misled or deceived. But for that law to be enforced, you need a lawyer.
But what happened to commercials being that what you saw in a commercial had to be true? Is there still truth in advertising? Is there anything that regulates it? If this product says it does X and Y, it has to do X and Y. Is someone watching that?
It depends on what state you're in. In Texas, we have a Deceptive Trade Practices Act, and if you say something and it's not true, you can be responsible. Some advertising, there's no liability. An interesting case that's becoming a big deal
Tell
again.
me in 10 seconds and you'll be fine.
Domino's and Papa John's. Papa John's advertised they had the best pizza. Well, the court found that was puffing, and you can't be liable for puffing. But make a statement of fact, you can be liable.
Right.
And I have to say goodbye. We are out of time. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Sorry, John. We'll let you speak last next time.
All right. Okay.
Now, each week we invite you to visit our home online at HoustonPBS. Simply click on the local program bar, then pick Houston 8. And you can join our online community, read about the guests, learn more about the topic, share your thoughts and ideas, and even suggest questions that we might ask during upcoming episodes. Remember, information posted on our website may be used on air, so keep that in mind when submitting. That does it for us tonight. Until next time, I'm Ernie Manous. Thank you for joining us, and have a great week.